Welcome into another episode of That Betting Podcast with Predictology. My name is Kris, the MLS card guy. John is our co-host. He's the man behind Predictology. How are you today, John?
I'm great, Kris. Good to be here once again. It seems to be going around faster and faster, these episodes.
Yeah, man. It seems like just a second ago we were talking, and I'm going through like so many podcasts now. It's crazy. I feel like I have a podcast every day to do. But yeah, last week didn't go the greatest for us, I would say. We had some picks that we thought were pretty good, and we got spoiled on our July 4th pick for FC Dallas. We got spoiled by a late winner at the end. Dallas were pretty good throughout that game, but I guess give us a full rundown of how bad we were last week there, John.
Well, yeah, I think it's definitely the elephant in the room we need to address right at the beginning. But unfortunately, we did our three main picks for the week all failed to deliver. Yeah, as you rightly said, Dallas. To be fair, for the first 60 minutes, should have been comfortably ahead in that game. They really took their foot off the gas, and as we knew from our stats last week, Inter Miami are quite strong in the last 15 minutes in terms of their scoring record, and taking their foot off the gas was definitely the wrong play from Dallas. And as it happened, a last-minute equalizer put paid to that one.
Yeah, that was a tough one too because Miami sort of half rotated. They had like Higuain in there instead of Campagna, and it was so like when they got to the end, they were still only 1-0 down, and they said, "Well, let's just bring on the starters," and they brought on the starters and worked out for them. So a little rough one, but can't win them all, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, when we saw the lineups, I was quite happy with what we saw on the pitch. But
yeah,
in the end of the day, Dallas themselves maintained their undefeated record going back to, I think it was early 2000s. But they'll be disappointed. They should really have won that game.
right.
I think another side that will be disappointed would have been Houston handing Charlotte their first ever away victory.
That was a tough
What
one.
are your thoughts on that one?
I didn't watch that one. I had other things going on, but yeah, I was kind of a little shocked when I saw Charlotte starting to score goals and start to go ahead, and I was like, "What is going on?" So, those two teams will have a little grudge match here with Houston and Dallas playing this week. We'll see who's the worst of the worst.
Indeed, and I think the last one of our picks was Orlando and your team, DC United. Now, what we did flag up here was that two of these sides had some of the expected lowest goals expected ratings. So obviously it was going to end in 0-0, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, we expected quite a defensive game in the hot August heat of it's July, hot July heat of Orlando, and yeah, it came to life early and often. And I'm not going to say I was upset because it was pretty fun as a DC fan, but yeah, it was definitely not what we expected. I will say that. Boy, they subbed Taxi off after a hat trick, and I think they subbed them off right after Orlando had made it 3-1, and then Orlando made it 3-2, and you're like, oh my gosh, are we going to blow this lead? But Orlando was throwing so many guys forward. It was like they didn't remember to play defense. Like I think we had maybe 5 attacks the whole game and we get 5 goals. It was absolutely absurd how poor their defending was in the back.
And I think in particular, for me at least, Pedro Galiz was at fault for at least 2 of the goals, probably 3. Yeah. I just felt his positioning was all wrong on 2 or 3 of those, and yeah, I mean, it was going to take a bit of luck or a bit of poor form for DC to rediscover their own form, and Galiz was very obliging.
Yeah, we'll see if this kickstarts things. I kind of doubt it, but there's a tough game this week that maybe we'll get into a little bit. But yeah, I think this is more an aberration. But this is Taxi Fountas, right? Like Taxi can just take over a game at any point. So it's kind of a little scary betting against DC because he could just go off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as we've seen. Look, I mean, if you could put some players around him, I think you may actually have a team there. But at the moment, you really have one good player and 10 not so good players.
One great player and 10 very, very poor players. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. That was obviously not our bright shining moment in the sun there last week, but we were pretty close actually on a few of those that we were on the right track, but just didn't get the end result. That's right, so it is. So this next week coming up, I guess we can turn our attention to. And it's kind of, I mean, they're billing it as rivalry week, right? But we talked before the show, like there's a rivalry week, and Red Bulls is playing Cincinnati. Like Red Bulls has two of the top five rivalries in the whole MLS, and they're playing neither one of them this week. So a few rivalry games to be had here for sure, but it seems like a missed opportunity to me.
Yeah, it does seem a bit of a loose definition of the name Rivalry Week compared to other seasons, but there's still a few cracking ones, which we'll get into later.
For sure. Yeah, there's some really good ones to get into, and we'll go through kind of some of the top rivalries and some of the top stuff to kind of look out for here. But you teased me here before the show in our pre-production here. You said you had a fun fact for me that I'm not going to believe. So let's have it.
Well, I'm gonna put you on the spot. So,
Oof.
how many players do you think have made an appearance in the MLS so far this season?
Oh my gosh. How many players have made an appearance? So we'll say like 20, maybe about 20 per team, maybe I guess a little more than that with injuries. Maybe like 25 per team. Hold on, I got to get my calculator out. I can't do this math in my head.
Atlanta probably
Say,
contributed a significant
oh
amount
my
to this.
gosh, I didn't think about
good.
Atlanta. I got to add another 100 for them. 23, there's 28 teams. All right, so we'll say 645.
Not so bad. So it's a lovely round number of 777 players at the end of last weekend.
That's incredible.
For those Sorare managers among us, that's a lot of players to have scouted so far this season.
It's 27.75 per team, by the way, which is absurd since there's only 30 roster spots per team.
Mm-hmm. And who do you think's sitting atop of the pile of performance-wise at the moment?
Performance-wise, as far as an individual player?
Yeah. June player of the month, Luciano.
Taxi. Oh, Lucho. Well, Taxi in the games that he's played, Taxi's been unreal. He's played only like 700 minutes and he's like top of the league in goals. But yeah, Lucho Acosta has been fantastic as well.
Yeah, he scored 1 goal and 3 assists in just 137 minutes this month.
Lucho or Taxi?
Acosta, Luciano.
Oh.
A goal and assist against New York. He's definitely looking back to the top form at the moment.
Yeah, he's been really good. I mean, you have to say, especially with the turnaround in Cincinnati, you have to give Lucho some consideration for MVP. You got to give Heel some consideration. And I mean, at this rate, Taxi is going to get into that conversation here pretty soon.
I'm sure. Yeah. So I think Acosta's record at the moment is 6 goals and 10 assists in 16 starts so far this season.
That's incredible. That's not quite Vela 2019, but that's pretty close.
Yeah, and he's second in key passes at 48. And Cincinnati themselves have already set their club record points for a season at 25. We're only halfway through. And also most wins in a season at 7. So they've been an interesting side to watch for the rest of the second half of the season.
That's just because they've been so bad in the last 3 years. Yeah,
there is that.
It's not exactly like they're setting Manchester United 150-year-old records here. I mean, this is 3 very bad years. But yeah, it's great. I mean, it's great to see them having some success, and hopefully they can keep things going. So let's get into rivalries a little bit, because we've got, this is a league that's grown to be quite large. So there are some brand new rivalries, let's say, and there are some very classic old school MLS rivalries that not a lot of people will know about. So just from the outside, I'm kind of interested. I want to hear what are your maybe top 3 rivalries that you would think of when you think of MLS rivalries.
I mean, look, for me, I mean, I think certainly from a European audience, the main one that we all know about is El Tráfico, so Los Angeles LA Galaxy. Mm-hmm. I mean, New York would be an obvious one for the uninitiated, and to be honest, the others I would actually have to look up or ask you, because I'm not huge on the geography, and it's not always clear which is the rivalry. For example, like you're saying Red Bulls is more of a rivalry for DC than Philly, which is what I think you were saying pre-show, 3 hours drive away. So it's I think you have to be on the ground to know, really.
Yeah, I mean, that the DC Red Bulls one is very much old school MLS. Those were 2 very good teams pretty much throughout MLS's history. I believe they're both original MLS teams. So they've been playing each other forever. It's called the Atlantic Cup, which consistently ranks in the top 5 of MLS rivalries. El
Mm.
Trafico obviously being fairly new as far as rivalries go. Just LAFC just started in 2018, but being in LA and the star power that both of those teams have had in the last 5 years, that's obviously a huge one. Um, you said the Hudson River rivalry, which is also a big one, always pretty much consistently ranks in the top five of most people's as well. Again, a pretty new one. New York City, I think, was 2015, 2016, somewhere in there that they joined the league. So
Mm.
that rivalry hasn't been going on for a long time. One rivalry that a lot of people may not know about, that is one of the better rivalries actually I would say, in world football. This is a rivalry between two cities that have been going back since the 1970s when they were NASL teams. These two teams just absolutely hate each other. The cities hate each other. They're not too far apart. And this is Seattle against Portland in the Cascadia Cup. Vancouver also gets
Mm.
thrown into the Cascadia Cup. So there's actually three teams that contest the Cascadia Cup, but Seattle and Portland are the two main ones. And that and El Trafico, depending on who you ask, is going to be the number one rivalry for most people. So Seattle against Portland is a massive, massive, massive one. And we'll get into Seattle Portland as well a little bit later on because I have some facts about that one. Some
Interesting.
other ones to watch. I mean, not all of these are going to be this weekend. The ones that are this weekend, the Texas Derby between Dallas and Houston is a pretty big one.
Mm.
Those are the two more original Texas teams. Austin has been thrown in there, but they haven't really changed the name around yet since Austin has been. So they'll have to consider that one. Columbus Crew in Cincinnati is a pretty good one. That's called the Hell is Real Derby, which is a really fun name. Colorado Rapids and RSL is one of the OG rivalries in the league. That's called the Rocky Mountain Cup. Toronto and Montreal is called the Canadian Classique. Classic. I don't know how to say it in French, but it's classic in French. LA Galaxy against San Jose Earthquakes is called the
Mm.
California Classico. Some other ones. Let's see if there's any other ones.
So would Orlando Miami be the start of a potential new
Yeah,
rivalry?
so
They're pretty
they've been
close.
playing. Miami is new as of 2020, I believe, 2019, somewhere in there. And I they haven't really had a name for that yet. Some people call it the Florida Derby. I heard on a broadcast somebody called it El Clasico del Sol, which I thought was a really good name for it. Another one for Orlando City is Atlanta. They really do not like each other. They're not close, but they're kind of closer. And before Miami got into the league, those were kind of the
Mm.
two close teams. And that's the most one-sided rivalry in the MLS because Orlando City has never beaten Atlanta United. Um, yeah, I think those are kind of the main ones. Apparently, this is one I had never heard of, but I saw when I was researching for this. FC Dallas against Chicago Fire is called the
Mhm.
Brimstone Cup. They haven't played it since 2019 because they're in different conferences now. But it used to be they used to play 4 times a year, so they used to be big rivals with each other. But yeah, I think those are kind of the main big ones I would say, and a lot of those games are going to be this weekend, as we know. The El Trafico is this weekend. The Cascadia Cup with Seattle and Portland is this weekend. Um, the always anticipated Toronto San Jose game is definitely this weekend. Yeah, I don't know why those two teams are playing this week. Florida Derby, Texas Derby, and Rocky Mountain Cup are the other big ones. So it'll be interesting. It's definitely um, there should be some good atmospheres, hopefully, because these are typically going to be the games where you'll sell a lot of tickets, um, especially in the Cascadia Cup and El Trafico will definitely have good atmospheres. But
Mhm.
yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of watch and see those games for sure.
And I think we talked about this on your Sorare in the States pod, but like what is the atmosphere like at some of these games? You know, is it passionate but fun, like family friendly, or are we talking River Plate Boca Juniors and you don't want to be anywhere near the stadium if you can help it? Like what's the atmosphere at these sort of rivalry games?
So it's definitely not River Boca. It's no it's always very safe. Like everybody is typically under control. There's not typically a lot of violence at these types of things. And I would
Mhm.
say a normal MLS game is very family friendly.
Mhm.
There's noise, but it's not like shout. There's not angry noise. Like there's no fights or anything going on. These kind of matches, though, are where you start to get a little bit more of the passionate fan base, the two sides that hit each other, the security lining up in the aisle, that kind of thing. So we'll
Sure.
see, I think, a little bit more of that maybe this weekend and when some of these other Classicos and derbies come around. Yeah, some of these teams really don't like each other, and not just in soccer, and in a lot of other sports as well.
Mm, interesting. Alrighty. Shall we get into it?
Yeah, we can go ahead and I think so. We kind of ran a lot long last week. We had a ton of stuff to get through, and it was all great information. And as it turned out, none of it was really that helpful. But we decided to try to narrow things down a little bit this week. So we're going to take maybe 5 or 6 games, go through those, and then we'll kind of rapid fire the rest of them, so that you still get kind of our opinions, but we'll try to keep it a little more content and time friendly. So we'll
Mhm.
start with the big one, right? We'll start with LAFC against LA Galaxy. I think we both had some thoughts on this game here, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, like I think first it's important to address. LA went over to Vancouver. I was quite confident in LA. I think you uh, were more siding with Vancouver, and as it proved, I mean, it was a very unbalanced lineup from LAFC. They had Bella and a few others missing. The bench just felt a lot weaker. They didn't really have that
Yeah,
firepower to bring on in the second half, and we know how strong they've been second half this year. But it was really Vancouver that took control in the second half, and although it was a late goal, it'd been one that was coming for a long time in that game. Um, Obviously, LAFC and Galaxy is shaping up. It's a relatively new derby, but certainly no less passionate than what we've
Whew.
seen.
Yeah,
Um, Galaxy themselves seem to have a bit of a stranglehold on this one in
yep,
recent times. They've not lost in the fixture since October 2020, won 3, drawn 2. And I th- and they've actually scored 2+ goals against LAFC in 10 of the last 12 meetings between the sides. They're certainly not having a problem with taking it to LA. Um, what else do we have in here? You've basically got two of the teams with the very high expected goal ratios. LAFC is second best at 1.93 in the league. Galaxy are fourth best, probably helped by their 4 goals last week, which at 1.65. And for LA, that goes up to 2.24 expected goals at home. One other interesting point is the corner counts. So you're basically looking at 2 teams that win the most corners per game so far this season. Galaxy was 7 per game, and LA was 6.33. So it's going to be a hard one to call. Everything indicates goals. They're both free scoring teams. Their recent records indicate goals. But it could get a little bit spicy. Back in April, there was 10 yellow cards in this match, and I think that's the second time that's happened in 2 or 3 issues of this fixture. Although I couldn't track back and find many red cards, but there's certainly going to be yellows on both sides, I think, for this game. What were you
yeah.
thinking?
This will be a very physical game and a very hotly contested game with a lot of shouting and a lot of shenanigans that are going to go on. I did write about this in the article here. This was the one of the 5 derbies that I didn't want to make a prediction on. I just kind of laid out the scene and said I have no idea what's going to happen because there's so many moving parts. And this is maybe something that we should have mentioned at the top of the show. The transfer window opened today, so teams are eligible to play their new transfers starting this weekend. So
Mm.
that means Bale, that means Chiellini are in the potentially starting lineup this week. How do these pieces fit? Like who gets benched? Who comes in off the bench? Later in the game that would normally be starting. Another thing to
Although
note. Yeah, go
I think I
ahead.
saw yesterday that Bale picked up a minor injury. Surprise, surprise. So he's probably not going to be ready until around about the 18th of July. Chiellini, I
Wow.
couldn't get a steer on, but I would be surprised if he went straight into the back line. But
That is that
yeah.
is funny. Same thing actually with Insigne as well. He's out until like July 23rd.
Mm.
Um, and another note to mention here is Douglas Costa is suspended for this game. He's not going to be playing.
Mm.
That may actually be a good thing for the Galaxy because he forces them to play a specific style, which means that Joveljic is going to be on the bench, whereas when he is suspended, Joveljic can start, and I think that's their better lineup anyway. if they have Joveljic and Efra Alvarez as the wingers instead of some combination of Cabral and Grandsir and Douglas Costa on the opposite side. I think they're a better team that way. You mentioned this has been a very one-sided rivalry. LAFC have been dominant in this league since day one, except against the LA Galaxy. LA has the LAFC has only won 21.4% of its games against the Galaxy, which is by far the lowest against any team that they've played. So it is not just one-sided. There's almost it's almost a curse. It's almost a like they've got a monkey on their back type thing at this point. So a part of me likes to lean LA Galaxy for that reason, and that's the reason I don't want to make a call on this game because talent wise, LAFC is better. This game is being played at Bank of California, which is LAFC's home. LAFC is not a huge heavy favorite. It looks like the stats kind of lean LAFC, but there's just that monkey on the Galaxy's back, and then I don't know how Bale / Chiellini / all these new arrivals are going to change things. So, yeah, I would probably stay away from this game, but I am sure going to be watching it. It's like 3 a.m. in England, so I know a lot of you guys may not watch it, but I'll be up late watching this game. So if you want to get up really early on a Saturday morning, feel free to flip that one on.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, look, I think it's going to be a cracking game. If you don't, as Kris says, it's early morning, so perhaps catch the highlights if you don't see the full game. But almost impossible to pick pre-match who's going to win this game. If really forced, it's a game that suggests goals, but just watch and enjoy would be my view.
Yeah, and a lot of times with these rivalry games too, you can just kind of throw out the records. You can kind of throw out what's been going on, and these two teams are just going to go at each other. Let's go to another one that we both had kind of highlighted and wanted to talk about, which is the Rocky Mountain Cup between RSL and Colorado. I have a feeling of which way the stats are going to lean here, and I feel like I'm leaning the same way, but I want to just be sure here before we go.
Well, yeah, I think you're probably right there. So, I mean, like first off the bat, Colorado got the worst away record in the league so far this season, yet to pick up a win. Whereas Vancouver, they're joint second in the form table, averaging 2.33 points per game. They got the best home advantage. Their defense improves 59%. They're fourth for scoring goals at home, 34, which is a 34% improvement on the season averages when playing away. It's just very, very hard to see past an RSL win, and the fact you're getting very close to even money against one of the worst away sides in the league. You're probably going to tell me there's a derby factor in here that needs to be factored in, but on prices and on stats, Salt Lake for me.
Yeah, so it's a good thing the stats line up with Salt Lake because the derby factor here also lines up with Salt Lake. RSL has lost one of its last 21 home editions of the Rocky Mountain Cup. They are just about unbeatable at Rio Tinto against Colorado. Can't beat them anyway. And in general, Rio Tinto has just been difficult for teams to go into this year, as you mentioned earlier. That includes 23 regular season wins for RSL in this derby, home and away. That's the most of any one team over another team since 2007. So this is the most one-sided rivalry and even just fixture. This is the most one-sided game in MLS historically. I don't see any reason why this would be super different this year. The one maybe saving grace for Colorado, they may get Jack Price back into this game. Brian Acosta seems to be coming along. Diogo Rubio is not bad. But you mentioned it; they're just so bad away from home. They've been okay at home, but I can't see too much out of this game for a Colorado perspective. And you also mentioned that they're pretty good value too. They're not super heavy favorites. The line is just about even money. So yeah, I think you go. I think you're going RSL here.
Yeah, I always get a little nervous when something is overwhelmingly in one column, just because sequences are there to be broken.
Right.
But there are several teams much shorter price than Salt Lake. But when you give the money and the prices and getting near even money, it's very hard to look elsewhere. It's probably one of my my value bets for the weekend, I would say at this stage.
Yeah. I mean, I would be hard pressed not to agree with you there. I do think this is a pretty good value all the way around. Maybe a game that a lot of people won't be able to stay up and see. A lot of people may not have watched a lot of RSL because they do play on the West Coast and they're typically playing night games because no one really wants to see them here in the States either. But yeah, I mean, this game has all the hallmarks of an RSL win, which probably means that the Colorado is going to get something out of it. But who knows? I
Yeah.
would certainly be backing RSL there. Let's talk about another one. So we got Atlanta against Austin here. Atlanta hosting Austin. Atlanta's 1.84 as the home favorite. Austin is 3.73 as the road underdog. I said last week that Austin, as an underdog of that size on the road, was pretty good value, and they turned up for it despite going down 2-0. They did eventually turn up for it.
Mhm.
How do we see this game rolling here?
Yeah, look, this is one that potentially falls in a similar bucket to the El Trafico, in that it's just a game I'm really looking forward to watching this weekend. Hard to go either way in terms of a victor. I think it's another game that promises goals. I think a couple of stats that put things in Atlanta's favor is their second half form is only bettered by Los Angeles LAFC.
Hmm.
They I think they've won 8 games in the second half. I'm not saying that's in terms of the second half scoreline. They've won 8 of their 16 games this year. Again, they beat New York effectively in the second half last week in the 2-2 draw. They see the second best improvement in goals scored when playing at home. They got their scoring ratio goes up by 39%, and they see the 6th best home improvement when they're at home. We're going up by 29%. So they're a much different proposition than they are on the road. They're a hard team to call because they're looking like they're returning to. They keep showing flashes of, I think, was it 2019 or 2018 when they were a really great side. They show flashes of that, and they have the pieces there. But boy, they've been unlucky and struggling with injuries this year, and not just 1 or 2 week injuries, but season-ending injuries. So you just never, they have it in them to put in a good performance against any side in this division. But it's very hard to back them with confidence because you just don't know what's going to happen with this team. But there's certainly a different proposition at home. That
Yeah,
said, they're up against an Austin side who currently have the best away record in the league,
right.
which was evident once again last week. Despite going 2-0 down, which probably would be enough for most teams, they came back and won 3-2 and probably could have scored more. From an Austin perspective, and I think this is what makes the second half so intriguing about this. So as we know, Atlanta are pretty poor in the first half, but certainly turned on in the second half. Whereas Austin have been drawing at halftime and winning full time in their last 3 away games. So it really could be a shootout in the second half for this one. But play it
That's a
safe, go for
really
goals.
interesting one. Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I do think there'll be goals, and talking about goals, this is one where we need to mention Atlanta in the transfer window because the transfer window is open, as we said at the start. And Atlanta has brought in a new goalkeeper who we presume is going to be taking the reins back there in the net. Is he good? Is he not good? We don't really know. If he's more of the same kind of mediocre, then Atlanta could be in trouble. If he turns out to be one of the better keepers in the league, this is a team to watch out for sure. I was talking to one of my Atlanta friends, and he said he wasn't 100% sure, but he thought that last week against NYCFC was the first time that they had all 4 of the big 4 attackers on the field at the same time. That being Joseph Martinez, Thiago Almeida, Luis Araujo, and Marcelino Moreno. And to get a result in Yankee Stadium, specifically going down like that, is incredible. That was an incredible result, 2-2 away to one of the better teams. I know NYC's been a little bit in shambles recently, but that was still good, really good signs for Atlanta to get a result in a tough game. And this will be another litmus test for them. Austin is a very good, very solid team. We expect them to be there in the end of the season. Can they get it done at home? See the thing with this game, I don't love the value. If Atlanta were a little longer, I might like to take that, but again, I don't love to bet against Austin because Austin's just a quality team that can turn up. Driussi can just have a game at any point. So Yeah, I think maybe stay away from this one, but both of these two teams are teams to watch. This should be a cracker of a game.
What's the price on the draw? I was just checking my notes while you were talking, and I've actually got this written down as a draw as the result and over 2.5 in from a
Th-
goals perspective.
391. It's
Nearly
pretty
2 to 1.
high.
That's quite tasty. I would probably, yeah, I think I'd back a draw in this one.
That's not
An
bad
entertaining
actually.
scoring draw.
Yeah, maybe like 2-2, something like that.
Could be.
Yeah, I do like that one. It'll be a good game to watch. It's late-ish. It's on at midnight, I believe. So it's a little later, but if you do like to stay up a little late, maybe tune into that one. Let's see. So we have a couple more rivalry games to get to. We talked about the Cascadia Cup being the rivalry game for most people, or for some people, maybe number two for others. It's a very big deal. These are two teams that really, really don't like each other. So Seattle and Portland, I've got some stats to go on here. Do you have anything on this game that was particularly noteworthy?
Um, I mean, not massively. I mean, the fact is, and we highlighted this last week, that Seattle have scored first in 50% of their games. They did it once again last week. And 61% of their goals have come in the second half. Again, they added the second of their 2 goals in the second half last week. So this is very much a team that you expect Seattle to be the one to go ahead in the game. And the longer the game goes on, the more likely Seattle will be to score. But aside from that, there's nothing to stand out apart from that we haven't covered before, and Seattle just being a very strong team.
Yeah, Seattle for sure is a strong team, but they have been a strong team the last, really since they came into MLS, but specifically the last 5 to 7 years. In that time period, so the last 14 regular season meetings between these two teams, the road team has won all but two of them. Sorry. The road team has not lost in all but two of them. They have 9 wins and 3 draws and 2 losses in the last 14 meetings. The only exception there was the 2018 playoffs. They played a 2-legged tie, and each team won the home leg. Outside of that, in regular season, it's been 3 draws and 9 wins for the road team in this, which is really, really odd considering what we know about the home field advantage in MLS, and specifically these two teams having really good home field advantages. But Portland is unbeaten in 6 straight at Seattle. They've won 4 and drawn 2, which is the longest such streak at the Sounders of any team in MLS history. So that's one thing to kind of keep a note here. Portland has absolutely owned Lumen Field in the recent days. Also, the Timbers are entering their match against Seattle on a season-long 4-match unbeaten run. So Portland is starting to kind of put things together a little bit. This is so typical Portland to just be absolutely horrible. We write them off at the beginning of the year. Here comes July and August, and they start to make their run towards the playoffs. This is how they do it every single year. That being said, I'm taking Seattle. I'm going against the run of form here. I'm going to take Seattle just based on how good that team is and how deep that team is, and the fact that they rested everybody against Toronto specifically for this game. The other thing to consider here is you may want to check pregame lineups, because Raul Ruidiaz is an absolute Portland killer, and he could be available in this game. He may not be available. So if he starts, Seattle for sure. If he doesn't start, I still probably like Seattle. Ruidiaz has scored 10 goals in his last 11 games against the Timbers, so he is an absolute Portland killer. The only player to score more against a single opponent in that time period, or sorry, not more, it's the same amount. Carlos Vela has 10 goals against the LA Galaxy. So another guy that will be going this weekend. But yeah, I do like Seattle in this game. Portland for me are Portland. They're a solid team that always figures things out at the end of the year. And I guess that should mean that they should be able to go into Seattle and get a result like they have done in the last 6 matches. But I still want to back Seattle. I still like Seattle too much. Yeah.
I think a single goal margin in this game, probably to Seattle, maybe 1-0 would be where I go. But I think more interesting is what you just said there is I might be running off in a moment to put a Diaz
Ruidiaz to score. There you
yeah.
go. That might get you. Well, I don't know. There might not be very long odds on that since they're so good against those two teams.
You never know.
So yeah, that's the Cascadia Cup there, which is obviously a really interesting one. Let's move on to New England versus NYCFC. This is one that you had highlighted that you wanted to have a go at. So we'll let you have the crack here. What's going on with New England and New York?
Where are we?
The odds for this game, by the way, are 1.63 for NYCFC. As the home team, New England is a 4.8 on the road to get a win.
Well, I think that the first interesting stat is would this be classed as a derby in MLS?
And maybe, I mean, New York and Boston do not like each other, but NYC is a fairly new team, so I guess you could maybe say it's a rivalry. But if you're picking a rival for New York City, it's going to be the Red Bulls. New England doesn't really have a rival, so yeah. I mean, I guess you could say it's a rivalry.
Yeah, the reason I asked it is that NYC have had a red card in their last 2 games against New England. So I was wondering, both of them in New England. So, which is obviously this is in New York, but thought that might be just something to keep in people's back of their minds that New York seems to get a little spicy against New England. I think that New York have gone from having the best defensive record in the league to they've now conceded at least 2 goals in each of the last 3 MLS games. I'm not sure on what the status of Thiago Martins is. I suspect he's not back for this one yet.
I don't believe so.
So it's New York are still scoring, but there's certainly things not quite gelling, and it's obviously a small time window since the change of manager. But I had this one. This one's been marked down for me as being one that should have goals. It's got a 75% chance of first half goals, 68% chance of over 2.5, and where I really see the value as being over 3.5 goals in this, which is rated for us at 48%. And that's sort of what I penciled in here as how I'd play the match. On the New England side, we highlighted last week that 33% of their goals conceded were in the last 15 minutes. That didn't quite happen last week. Brenner missed it by 2 minutes with his goal there on 73. But they're still a team, I think, that are liable to concede in those final 15, 20 minutes a game. That said, they are undefeated in their last 10 games, and there will certainly be difficult opposition for New York coming into this. So I prefer to focus on goals.
Yeah, New England has turned things around since the slow start to the beginning of the season. 10 in a row is true. It is also 6 draws, though. So it's not like they're really lighting the world on fire. They're just not losing, which is good, but not great. The other thing, New York City has not won a game since they lost Ronnie Dial-Up, but that's also 3 draws, 1 loss. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like, and you talked about this being a potential rivalry. It could develop into a rivalry. I mean, NYCFC knocked out New England last year, New England being the winningest team of all time in MLS, the most points ever scored. And they knocked them out on penalties in last year's conference semifinal at New England. And that's one of the games that you're mentioning was a red card. Tati Castellanos got sent off in that game. It's tough. Like, no one really goes into New York City, not New York City, into Yankee Stadium, because NYC does play games at Red Bull Arena occasionally, and those games they can lose. But teams really don't go into Yankee Stadium and get wins. It's just such a weird environment, and the field dimensions are so odd that it throws teams for a loop. So yeah, I mean, I could see this being a draw in this game. I could see another kind of Atlanta score, like a 2-2 type thing that we were talking about with Atlanta and Austin. I could see both of these teams just not really taking the game by the horns. Both teams are maybe making some mistakes at the back. Yeah, I think this is a really interesting game to watch because I think both of these teams probably eventually make the playoffs. But again, it's not really one that I have a great feel for or a great read on. It's just you're right, a lot of goals potentially in this game.
Yeah, look, I think that's a theme for this weekend a little bit. There's several games that perhaps wouldn't bet on, but certainly want to watch both from a spectacle, but also taking some very key learnings from certain teams for what the rest of the season may look like.
Right.
But there are perhaps other matches where there's clearer value. But this one in particular, there's definite value in 3 to 4 goals in this game. I do like the over 3.5, which I think we've got a 50-50 chance of getting that. So I think when I'm looking at it, the odds are about 2.5. So you're getting pretty good margin in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I do like goals in that game. So last game I think that we'll go maybe a little bit more in depth with, and we'll kind of speed things along here a little bit after that. Houston against Dallas, the Texas Derby. We've talked before about these two teams being more the original teams in the state of Texas. And this is definitely one that has some Derby stats for me to go through. What do you have on your side? Do you have anything numbers wise that would lean either way?
I just have a couple of interesting observations. This is historically, certainly in the last 5 editions of these fixtures, there's been 17 goals shared between the two sides, so they certainly go toe to toe with each other. One side factor is Houston actually have the highest yellow card count in the league at the moment. They're averaging 3.3 yellow cards per game, and they're second highest in match cards. So that's averaging over 4 cards in a match, 89% of their games. So they're actually a bit more bite to Houston than I perhaps thought, and that's obviously other teams will respond to that. So this game could actually get a little heated, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, this game will get heated. I would be willing to bet on that one. So yeah, you mentioned how Houston has bite, and they're actually adding Hector Herrera this weekend, so that is going to add a little bit more bite to this game as well.
Very much so.
I don't know if he has any strong feelings towards Dallas, but I know he has strong feelings towards people on the other team. So I know that he'll be ready to mix it up. This is kind of an interesting one because Houston has lost 8 of its last 11. They did win the other 3, so no draws in that time period. But they have lost 8 of the last 11, and Dallas has only won 1 of its last 7. So both of these teams are kind of sputtering after pretty good starts to the season. And for Dallas, the thing that's really flipped has been the defense. In the last 7, they've allowed 13 goals. Before that, they had only allowed 8 goals after their first 11 matches. So they were really tight defensively to start the season. Things are starting to loosen up a little bit, and that might be Texas Heat that's kind of getting to them and not allowing them to press quite as hard as they were at the beginning of the season. Let's see. So I did mention Derby stats, right? We talked about how Seattle and Portland is a match dominated by the away team. This one is dominated by the home team, which is not specifically surprising in the MLS. But the home team has not lost any of the last 16 meetings between these two teams, 8 wins and 8 draws. The last away team to win was Dallas in August of 2016. They haven't won, the Dynamo haven't won consecutive home matches against Dallas since they won the first 5 meetings that were at home from 2006 to 2007. So despite the fact that Houston has been, or the home team has been very good, Houston themselves have not won consecutive home matches against Dallas in this rivalry. Yeah, this will be an interesting one. I would expect quite a few yellow cards in this one. I do think Dallas on paper is probably the team here, but again, this is one where we're adding a major piece into one of these two teams. And how does that change? Does he gel? Does he add to Houston going forward? Or is he just there to be, to sit in the middle and just destroy things? Either one could be helpful, but if he's trying to add things going forward, that may not gel immediately. Dallas, on the other hand, is kind of slumping a little bit. They're not adding any pieces as far as I know, at least no major pieces. But they do have a very dynamic front 3 that at any given point can just kind of pop up and get you. And I think they are kind of suffering from the heat, and they're trying to play this up-tempo style with that front 3, and they're starting to run out of gas a little bit. But I still see in a rivalry game, I think you get that little bit extra juice, and you can kind of go that little bit further. So I actually kind of like Dallas as a 2.88 underdog in this game. But I could also see them absolutely burning out at the end of this game. And the next week, I might pick against Dallas just based on the fact that they'll be absolutely gassed. But yeah, any reaction to any of that?
No, I think they're all fair comments. I just think this is going to be a game. I haven't looked at the spreads, but if you could get booking points at a decent price, I mean, these stats may well already be built into those odds, but I had this written down in my notes as most likely a draw, both teams to score. So I'm looking at a sort of maybe a 1-1 and a handful of yellow cards kind of going into the game.
It's an interesting one. I mean, like I said, these two teams haven't drawn much. Houston hasn't drawn in its last 11. Dallas has only drawn twice in its last 7. So they're not typically draw type teams. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to pick between the two. That's for sure. The odds are kind of split that way. So it does kind of lend itself to more of a draw. And if you do have a lot of yellow cards, the chances of there being a red card in this game are pretty high, in my opinion. And a red card could absolutely change the game and tilt it one way or the other. So it also could be one to just kind of stay away from. But I still kind of want to believe in Dallas just flat out having more talent. The other thing that I saw on Houston was in the last 11 matches, um, they have not conceded a goal and gotten a point in the same game. So every game that they concede one goal, they have lost in their last 11 games. The only 3 games that they kept a clean sheet, they won all 3 of those games. So really, really interesting here. When Houston gives up a goal, they always lose.
That's interesting.
So yeah, it'll be a fun one. These two teams are, yeah, we've talked about it ad nauseum here on Rivalry Week. These two teams don't like each other. There should be a lot of physical play coming. I think those are the main ones here that we wanted to get through. Let's just go kind of rapid fire. We'll just kind of go through the odds and just maybe a quick stat or two here. So we'll start with Philadelphia and DC. DC coming off the big win. Philly is 1.72. DC going on the road is 4.52 to get the win.
Yeah, willing these off. I mean, Philadelphia are the draw specialists this season. We flagged it last week, and they drew 0-0, which makes it 9 draws for the season so far. They are, however, unbeaten at 9 at home, probably largely due to those draws. But they do have the upper hand against DC. Have won the 9 of the last home matches again, all competitions against DC. And so yeah, I mean, I think you would. What was it? Another interesting fact for you on this one. There's been a penalty scored in 3 of the last 4 games between these two sides. So that probably helps us make a decision on anything in this match. But it was quite interesting to me all the same. Look, I think. I mean, it's very hard to go past a draw considering Philly's record with those this year. DC's win last week, more so than the performance, I would say, adds a complicating factor to this one. But at the moment, I think Philly win is about a 58% chance. If you're getting odds better than that, then I'd probably side with Philly for this.
Yeah, I think I take Philly in this game. DC, they scored 5 goals. They're probably not going to score 5 goals again for a long, long time. Taxi can go off on his day, but outside of Taxi, it is really one-way traffic. And I believe, unless I'm mistaken, Jose Martinez is fit to play in this game. He's going to probably mark Taxi out of this game. I don't think this is a good matchup at all. I like Philly in this game, I think, pretty comfortably. Also, to note here, Philly gets their trio of youngsters back on the bench. Paxton Aronson, well, actually 4 youngsters. Paxton Aronson, Quinn Sullivan, Jack McGlynn, who am I forgetting? Brennan Craig, all come back from the US U20 team that just won the CONCACAF championship. So they will have a much deeper bench than they've had in the last maybe month. So just something to note there for Philly. They'll have that spark off the bench at the end. Let's go to Vancouver against Minnesota. Vancouver, again, at BC Place, the toughest place to play in the world. They're 2.26 as the slight favorite. Minnesota comes in at 2.99. What do we think?
Yeah, so I think, we highlighted last week Vancouver's strong record in the last 15 of scoring. 26% of their goals at that time had come in that period, and they once again did that against LA. The standout stat for me is that there's been over 2.5 goals in the last 5 games between these sides, Vancouver and Minnesota. And Minnesota have also had over 2.5 goals in their last 5 away games. So I'd actually probably be in the position to take the contrarian view on this one, and I'd be backing under 2.5 goals in this game.
It's a really interesting one. I don't know. I don't know exactly how I feel about this. I do. I love me some Vancouver at BC Place. But I don't know that I love the value on that because it's not great. 299 against the Minnesota team that I have a lot of confidence in, but as we've mentioned before, I'm not a big fan of the coach Adrian Heath. This might be just one that I stay away from. Maybe the under. Um, I don't know. I might just stay away from that one in total. Let's see. Next one that we haven't covered, Charlotte is against Nashville. So this could eventually end up being a rivalry, but this obviously Charlotte's first year. Charlotte 2.28 at home. Nashville is 3.17 to go on the road and pick up the win. What do we think?
Yeah, I'd say those odds are probably about accurate. I mean, we've spoken previously about Charlotte's fairly strong home record, although a couple of teams have gone there and taken something away. They did upset the apple cart in Houston last week with their first away win of the season. Last week we highlighted the fact that Nashville, 41% of their goals are scored in the first 30 minutes. Last week they took the lead on 18 minutes. So again, they're a team that starts very strongly in a game, and I think if they take a strong position in this game to get an early goal, I see Nashville taking it. But I'd want to see how the teams shape up in that first half.
Interesting. So I'm just quickly looking through stats here. This was one that I don't think I've ever heard about any team. Nashville's up and down season continue with a 2-2 draw against Portland on Sunday. Nashville has not recorded the same result in consecutive matches in any of their last 13 games. 5 wins, 5 draws, 3 losses, but they've never had back-to-back of the same results. So we know they're not going to draw. And also, Charlotte has 23 points after their first 19 games as a club. Only 4 of the previous 17 expansion teams have 25 points out of their first 20. So we know that Charlotte is not going to win. That leaves Nashville to win as the only result left. So that's what's going to happen.
All right, so Nashville score in the first 30 minutes and win the game. Sounds about right.
There you go. Although Charlotte at home is a tough matchup, I will say that. Cincinnati is against New York Red Bulls. Cincinnati at home, 2.66 favorites. Underdogs. Red Bulls go in as the favorite, 2.47.
Yeah, look, I think it was a mature performance from Red Bulls last week at Kansas. Casey pretty much were pushing throughout the second half, maybe not ineffectually, but Aaron Long got the winner, which put them top of the Eastern Conference, third overall, and they continue to have the best away record in the league. One team in this particular fixture, one team has failed to score in 4 of the last 5, so it's either been one team scoring and the other not. I see that with Cincinnati's improvement in form and New York's strong away record, both teams to score to end that particular sequence is the way I'd play this one.
I do think there's goals in this game for sure. Cincinnati have proven, I mean, the knock on Cincinnati has always been the defense. It's been better this year, but it's still not been anywhere near elite. Cincinnati has started to get Acosta, Brenner, and Vasquez going all at the same time, which is really scary. But I think New York is just really good. Like the additions of Luquinhas and Lewis Morgan have made a huge difference to this team this year. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think New York is actually a legitimate team. I was kind of writing off their early season performances as just Red Bull pressing in, it'll kind of rub off towards the end of the year. But I'm starting to come around a little bit on this Red Bulls team. I've always liked Cincinnati. So I actually think this is a really high quality potential playoff matchup. And I think there's goals in this game for sure. I do like taking home underdogs though, especially in this situation. So I might still side with Cincinnati. Montreal against Sporting Kansas City. Montreal at home is a 1.79 favorite, and Sporting Kansas City 4.13 to go on the road and get the win.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the worst value price of the weekend for Montreal. I think I highlighted this a couple of weeks ago in that, they basically just tried to outscore the opposition so far this season, and they've been free scoring, but conceding plenty as well. And it only takes a slight drop off in their forward line performance for those results to turn from wins into defeats. And that the goal certainly dried up last week as they got spanked 4-0 at Galaxy. And I think we could actually start to see a sequence of very poor results for Montreal in the coming weeks. And for that reason alone, I'm going to take a chance and say that this could be Sporting Kansas chance to get a win on the board. It's been a long time. They did show they're not clinical up front, but they certainly showed a better performance last week. 63% possession, 16 shots. Sadly, only 4 of those were on target, but at the prices, I'd be taking a bit of value in KC.
Interesting. I don't want to do that just because it's Sporting Kansas City, but boy, like you do make a good point. Sporting is also traditionally very good against Montreal. They're let's see, they've won or drawn 7 of the last 8 matches against the Impact, or sorry, not the Impact anymore, against Montreal. Yeah, that still scares me. Like I still don't want to pick Sporting Kansas City for anything. Like you have 2 DP level players missing. It just is such a big deal. For me, he's just a good coach, and eventually they'll get back to being Sporting Kansas City. But I don't know. This might just end up being a write-off year, and Montreal is still tough to play at home. I'd probably just stay away from this game.
On Montreal. But
I don't
that price. So.
I don't blame you. Let's see, Toronto and San Jose. Now, this could be the biggest game of the weekend, except for the man that should make it the biggest game of the weekend is currently hurt. So, Incendier is not going to make his debut, but 34-year-old Domenico Criscita will. Toronto 2.16 as the home favorites. San Jose Earthquakes 2.95. This is probably still going to end up being a pretty big crowd because they've sold a lot of tickets for people to see Incendier. I don't know. What do we think about this game?
Kris, I'm going to go there. I'm going to say Toronto clean sheet in this one.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, no. What are we doing? We've lost all credibility.
Well, I'm a big believer in no sequence can go along forever. And San Jose have got 0 away wins this season. I think Toronto, it's got to come sooner or later. I'm not saying that they're setting the world alight, but this is a perfect opportunity for them to grind out a 1-0 win. So I would say either back Toronto to win and keep a clean sheet, which is 4-1, or just take the clean sheet at 3.5. It gives you the draw. But I'm going there.
Oh boy, San Jose is bad on the road. I will give you that. I feel like they still score though. Like they're still a very free scoring team. They've always been very leaky in the back, but they've always still scored some goals. Boy, that's a bold strategy. I wasn't prepared for that at all. I was prepared to just take the 2.16, nice easy one on Toronto and just move on. Toronto to keep a clean sheet against San Jose. San Jose's got some dudes that can score, and Cade Cowell's back too. I can't join you on that one. I don't think. Right. I wish you the best. I really do. I hope we see a Toronto clean sheet soon. But boy, I don't know if it's San Jose. They are flying across 2 countries though to play this game. It was like 2,000 miles. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I probably wouldn't put this as the hill I would die on, but I'm still going to be bold and take this one.
Man, you're a bolder man than I am, that's for sure. Chicago and Columbus Crew. The Fire are 2.07 at Soldier Field this weekend. Columbus Crew welcome Chucho Hernandez into the starting fold. They are 3.49 as the road underdogs. What do we think?
Well, I think it's look, Chicago, the lowest scorers still, but they got that as I highlighted last week. Their expected goals for is still sitting around the 1.5 mark. So I still think there's hope in this side. They're 11 goals less than they should have scored this season, which would make a tremendous difference to the table. But they do seem to pick up the wins at home. Yeah, I think the last 2 have been 1-0 home wins, and then they've gone away and lost the last 3. So I wouldn't bet against another low-scoring Chicago win, particularly as Columbus are yet to prove that their signings are going to change their forward line too much. So, yeah, like I don't have too much to say on this, but I do think Chicago to edge a low-scoring game.
So this is one point that I made in the article that I think we need to keep in mind, especially with attacking players and especially with guys that have been in Europe for their entire careers. MLS is a very physical league that requires a bunch of travel. Guys do not immediately blend into this league perfectly and make the difference that you think they will make. That being said, Columbus is basically one striker short of being a really, really good team. So if Chucho can come in and get into this team, he can make a really, really big difference. I really like Columbus to make a run here towards the end of the season and to be pretty dangerous getting into the playoffs because I like a lot of their pieces. Um, and I mean Chicago, they did have a who did they beat the other weekend? They beat somebody like last weekend, I think, and oh, it was Philadelphia. That's who it was, Philadelphia. And it was like, what is that? I mean, their only other win in the last 13 games is against DC. They've lost 9 times in the last 13 matches. Only win against DC, who's just absolutely horrible, and Philadelphia, which I can't explain that game at all.
Mm.
I just don't think this is a very good Fire team. Um, that being said, the home side has not lost any of the last 17 meetings between these two teams, and the visiting team has won 3 of the last 37 meetings between these two teams since 2008. So it's definitely a home dominated series. Um, I still like Columbus though. I think I still like Columbus.
All right.
We're also getting some pretty good value at 3.49 on Columbus, so I think I would go that direction.
All right, happy to oppose you on that one. Just one other side stat for this: Chicago Fire's games are seeing 4 or more yellow cards 94% of the time so far this season. So again, it could be
Interesting.
another game for guards.
Interesting. There should be a lot of cards. Hopefully this weekend, we should get to see a lot.
Christmas in
I
July.
yeah, right. I think that is all of them. Remind me if I'm wrong, but I think we have covered
I
everything.
think we, I think we missed Orlando into Miami, didn't we?
Did we? Oh, we didn't talk about that one earlier. Oof.
Yeah.
So that is the Florida Derby. 1.73 on Orlando, 4.46 on Inter Miami, and this is one that I actually wrote about, so I don't know how we missed it. But yeah, what do we have on this one quickly?
Yeah, look, I think Orlando's the one that interests me. I think we called them out last week. They were excellent margin in the prices. Obviously, we know what ended up happening at DC, but I think they'll take a lot from that second half performance. They were really underscoring this so far this season. They had an expected goals for of 109, which is second lowest in the league, but then go out and score 3. Inter Miami actually surprising me this season, but that said, their away record's still pretty poor with 1 win and 7 defeats. So yeah, I think Orlando to edge this one. Inter Miami is still dangerous in the last 15 to 20 minutes of a game. So watch out for that.
So this traditionally has been a very even rivalry. Orlando has 3 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses. So very, very even. Neither team has really gotten an edge as the series has gone on. The last meeting between these two teams was a 0-0 draw, and that's the first time either team has kept a clean sheet against the other. So out of the first 7 meetings, 6 of them both teams have scored. So typically this is a game that involves quite a few goals. Yeah, I mean Orlando. I'm worried about Orlando, to be honest with you. Orlando has lost 5 times at home this year. The previous 2 seasons, they had only lost 3 times combined in those 2 seasons at Exploria Stadium. I'm really worried about the home form. Inter Miami, as weird as this is to say, I think there's actually probably value in Inter Miami towards the bottom of the underdog pool here. They're one of the longer shots this weekend. Man, they just keep surprising me though. So at some point, like I have to start believing in the results as opposed to what I think should be happening. They also, I I still don't know what's happening with the Pozuelo deal. If I mean, he theoretically should be available for this game for Inter Miami, Alejandro Pozuelo. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Either way, I still think Inter Miami has shown me something. At least I watched that Dallas game and they showed me something like they took a punch from Dallas early in that game and they just kind of hung in there and just ground out a draw on the road. And I was actually fairly impressed with them. Drake Callender
Mm,
is also a big X factor because he looks fantastic. He kept them in that
mm.
game. He's kept them in quite a few games this year so far. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Inter Miami maybe, but
Yeah,
not
it
not
certainly shows
strong
the
or confident.
importance.
Yeah.
It certainly shows the importance of having a good goalkeeper. It makes those extra margins in terms of points, picking up a draw here that was a defeat, or picking up a win that was a draw. Um, that can have a big impact on the team, and we're seeing that with Inter Miami. I still think they're stronger at home. They're yet to.
For
There's a
sure.
very good result away in Dallas, but they still need to work on that away form before I think they're real contenders. But I think that they're a solid playoff chance. But I think Orlando are going to come out and edge
Oh,
this one. I like them last week, and I'm going to give them a second chance this week.
Orlando are better on the road, aren't they? Do they have better numbers on the road than at home?
They absolutely do. Their home form is where they've been really underperforming. But I
Yeah.
think that again, I think that's something I'm looking at trying to predict when that will start to move back towards the mean. So I think this could be an
Yeah.
opportunity for Orlando to pick up some points. They certainly found that their scoring ability last week. Now they just need to convert that into something
Well, the problem with that is
on the road.
they were throwing so many pieces forward that they just weren't playing defense, which is why they gave up 5 goals, you know? Like I don't know if they
Mm.
scored that many goals if they weren't so exposed at the back. Um, but yeah, I mean, they'll start there. They didn't start Facundo Torres in the DC game. They also got kind of sucker punched with 2 early goals. I doubt that happens again. So yeah, I mean, Orlando
Yeah,
are the better team in this game, but I mean, talking value, 4.46 on Inter Miami, I don't think is horrible. It's my
it
point.
certainly isn't. I'll add a caveat to mine, and I want Torres to be starting. I think he was a difference maker when he came on in that game. So if he's not
Yeah.
starting, I'll be less confident in Orlando. But I think if he's back into the starting 11, I'll go with my Orlando win.
And barring COVID or an injury or something, he'll be starting this game. The reason he was rotated was for this game. So there's no reason why he wouldn't start unless he picked up something in training this week. So yeah, I think that is now it for the games this week, unless I'm mistaken. Let's see. We have a few other things to get to here before we wrap up. So we've got our best bets of the week coming up. We're gonna do Predictology 101 here first. So we're just gonna kind of learn a little bit about predictology, about betting in general, wherever you kind of want to go with it. This week, we're gonna be talking about the new market mover tool, which I think is a pretty cool thing that you guys have just added to the site. So kind of explain to us what that is and how that helps us be able to kind of hone in a little bit more on our bets.
Yeah, absolutely. So the market mover tool is basically tracking odds pretty much from once those markets are initially formed and provided by the bookmakers, which can be anything up to about a week before the game's due to take place. And it will just track the movements of those odds. And if anything, if we start to see a significant movement up or down in one of the outcome odds, at sort of thresholds of 10%, 20% through to 50% plus, it will flag up in a easy to digest report on the site. You can also use visualization so you can see those odds movements throughout that period. And I find it can be good. It has two purposes. One, if you catch those movements early enough, it's certainly good for pre-match trading. So if you're using an exchange, you can, if you see those odds going in a certain direction, enter the market, lay off at the lower price, lock in a profit before the game even starts. But it's also very valuable for validating any bets that you might be planning for a weekend ahead. So the example I used earlier was, you're strongly fancying LA in a game, and then you check this report before putting your money on. You see the odds have drifted. That might be a warning sign for you to go and check the team news, i.e., Carlos Vela, and see if there's a reason for those odds movements, which could indicate that you need to reassess the match and hopefully save you a little bit of money along the way.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the things that I would be using it for as well. Is just to, and I kind of do this. We don't really talk too much about Sorare here, but I kind of do this with Sorare as well. I'll get an offer or two on a player, and I know immediately that something's happened with that player, like he's got an injury or he's got a transfer rumor or something like that, and that's kind of an early warning sign for me to go and check it. And I really like this tool because I think that does kind of the same thing. You can see, well, if they were a certain price 2 days ago and now they're a completely different price now, what's changed? You can go and kind of investigate that and maybe even find some value in the opportunity as well. So that's a really interesting thing. Where can they find that on the site?
Yeah, so it's in the members area. Quite simply, once you've logged in and on the members hub page, just look at the top menu bar and the last one in the list on there at the moment. It will just say market movers. And click on that, and it will go into the first report.
Perfect. So a really good tool for you to be able to use as you start to try to hone in on some good values that you can place in the market. So we'll go through, just to wrap things up here. We'll go through maybe our top 5 bets of the weekend here, and this could be anything from a team to back, a guy to score a goal, Rui Diaz, or anything along those lines. So where are we going to go with this one? Maybe we'll just kind of alternate.
Sure. Like I'll probably say that my best bet of the weekend would be both teams to score in the Cincinnati New York Red Bull game. That's the one I think is most likely to happen over the fixture program.
Okay, I like that. I can
about $1.65 for that.
Yeah, I can certainly back that for sure. I do think there's goals in that game. I think I'm going to take a winner for my best bet of the weekend. I think I'm going to take Seattle to beat Portland and kind of end this road team domination streak. Seattle for me is just too good, and Portland, while they are starting to figure things out, I still think Seattle is the better team. They've rested their starters for this game specifically. Rui Diaz potentially coming back into the lineup also makes a big difference. I'm going to take Seattle at home to get the win at 184.
I think that's a great shout. It was very close to make it onto my list, but I'm going to go with the stats and Salt Lake to beat Colorado once again as my value favorite for the weekend.
That was going to be mine too. That was going to be my next one. I do like RSL over Colorado in that game. Let's see. I'm gonna take some goals in Atlanta Austin. I think you had mentioned this a little bit earlier. I think 3.5 goals in that Atlanta Austin game. I do kind of like Atlanta, but again, against Austin, one of the better teams and a new goalkeeper. I'm not sure how good that goalkeeper is going to be. He could just throw a whole wrench into this and stand on his head and not let us score any goals. But I do think there's goals in this game.
Cool. And you might not be surprised, I'm going to go with my roughie of the weekend, or my long shot, is that Toronto win clean sheet.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're going with that. I love that so much. Long shot for me. Let's see. Who's a long shot I like? I guess we'll go with Inter Miami against Orlando to get maybe can I do Inter to get a win or a draw against Orlando?
You can,
because it'll be a little bit lower, but I think that's a little bit more realistic. Because Inter to win is I don't know, kind of bold for my taste, but yeah, I do like some value in fading Orlando right now. I don't think they're a really great team that's really running it. They certainly have the potential to be a great team, but I don't think they're running at full tilt right now. And I think Inter Miami is getting all that they can out of their players. So I'll take Inter to at least get a result in this weekend.
All right. So if you did that as a draw no bet, so the money's back on a draw, you can get Inter at about 3.3, 3.4. If you were taking Inter and the draw, you're getting actually that's not bad odds. You're getting even money on that, so that's a pretty good shout, I'd say.
Yeah, I'll take the even money. It might be a draw. I was gonna say maybe 3-3-4. That sounded a little good for not having to risk anything on a draw. But yeah, I think Inter to get a result at 80 money is not bad.
And if you're willing to search around, you can probably get almost up to 2.1 on that. So 5 to 4. So yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Cool. So I think those are our top bets of the weekend. Did you didn't have any other ones, right? Or did you have another one?
That's my shout for this weekend.
Cool. So those are our top bets of the weekend. We'll have those in the show notes for you guys if you want to follow along with what we are going through. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Was there anything we didn't cover this week?
No, I think we got through everything. How did we do on time this week, Kris?
I think we're pretty good. I don't have an actual timer going, but I know what time we started, so I think we're doing pretty good.
All right. Well, the main thing is, hope everyone is enjoyed it at home, got some useful information. found the format and the length of the pod a little better this week. But as always, please feel free to like the show, like the podcast, leave a review or send us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you all.
Yeah, definitely the reviews really help us out, and you can also interact with us on Twitter at PredictologyBet as well. But that'll be it. Good luck with your bets this weekend, gentlemen.